Hello, welcome again to Unpublished Journeys. Today my guest is Lovro Saric. Lovro is a PhD student at University of Bern in Department of Geology. Let's listen to his story, and as always, please tell us your comments, your opinion, and your criticism. Thank you so much for listening to Unpublished Journeys. Hello Lovro, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Yasser, for having me on the show. I'm very excited and glad to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty fine, thanks. You as well?
Yes, I'm also fine as well. Looking forward for the next step of my journey, actually. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm good, thanks. Before we start, I think best person can introduce you would be yourself. So can you tell us a bit about yourself? What are you doing at the moment? Which stage of your journey you are? And then we continue.
Of course. So, as you introduced me by name and surname, that part is not necessary. I am coming from Croatia, from a city called Rijeka, which is on the northern part of the coastal area. I am, by training so far, material scientist and crystallographer in the most broad sense, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD at the University of Bern, again in the field of crystallography. And if I could describe in a very broad sense what I'm doing, it would be mainly that I'm researching correlations between crystal structure, underlying electronic structure, and correlating it to the observed magnetic properties of phosphate materials.
So you evaluate microscopic property by evaluation of the electronic structure and arrangement and all of these things.
Exactly.
I mean, very, very simplistic way, of course. It's not that simple, I know. Okay. So far that you are in this stage. So if you want to tell us about where did you start your journey? I don't know if you want to go back to your childhood, the childhood dreams, what you wanted to be. I don't know, typically a doctor or astronaut, or I don't know. Wherever you want to start.
Yes, of course. Yeah. To be very honest, if we were going to talk about my very early childhood, although I'm still pretty young, I actually do not recall what were my dreams in that time period, because I guess I didn't really have any specific direction back then.
Okay.
I was just enjoying the life, so to speak.
I mean, that's great, right?
Yes. But coming on, let's say, to the educational phases of my life. So I finished the middle school. In Croatia, we divide the school period of your education into elementary, which is 4 years, middle school, which is another 4 years, but it's actually coupled together. You're still in the same class with the same colleagues. And then you decide to which high school you want to go. And well, as I was a student who had, let's say, pretty good grades, the logical choice for me would have been to continue into the direction of attending a gymnasium program instead of a vocational school, which is also quite a popular choice back in those days. I'm not on track how it is today anymore. And there, during the high school period, I guess those are some of the formative years where you, let's say, should be able to more clearly define your interests or your goals or your ambitions.
I see.
For me personally, during my high school, I was in a situation that I actually didn't know myself that well or what I wanted to do immediately after finishing my high school.
Okay.
Because the only, let's say, direction that professors in our high school used to give was that the degrees that are worth doing in order to obtain a job, and a stable, let's say, life in our region, or maybe even country to extend, would be either a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. One of these three professions. So from these three professions that I was directed to, my early dreams, let's say, or ambitions during my high school days were medicine, to study medicine. But as it was extremely competitive, it was not really that easy to get into the degree program of studying medicine in the University of Rijeka, which basically led me to the decision to prepare for my final exams to go into medical school, which in the end didn't turn out to be successful simply because of the high competition.
Of course, of course.
And I was actually left pretty much in a situation where I was honestly clueless on what would be the best choice for me to study further, which made me take let's say a year and a half or 2 years of a gap, where one and a half year was just simply a time to take off from the entire stress of preparing all these exams and forget about any expectations that society is asking you for. And another year and a half was just spent working odd jobs, unqualified jobs that you can do if you finished a gymnasium and gathering some savings. And in this entire hiatus period, I actually did start to, let's say, ask myself a bit more what would be a suitable thing for me to study. And during high school, I actually had a lot of different interests. I was quite interested in philosophy, sociology, politics, performed quite well in those subjects as well. But I also had a keen interest in subjects like biology, chemistry, physics and mathematics, not that much, because I was a bit, let's say, unconfident in my numerical skills. I had a bit of a fear of quantitative science. And in this entire unclear situation, I delved a bit more into researching myself what different degree programs exist which could, let's say, satisfy my interests. And in the end, I was basically picking between chemistry and geology. And why geology? Because I did, in fact, research a bit what is the bachelor program about myself, digging into all the different courses, and saw that it's a quite nice combination of both chemical subjects as well as biological subjects, which fed into, let's say, some interests of mine.
Okay.
One of the other reasons why I guess you could say that I was interested in geology is related to childhood, but indirectly, because I spent a lot of time in my earliest childhood as well as adolescent years visiting my grandparents at the countryside, spending time in nature, observing nature, natural phenomena, the world around us, which I guess also might have been another, let's say, trigger or driving force which led me...
like inspired you, right?
Exactly. Researching basically like an amateur as a child, different types of plants, birds, fish, rocks, the usual.
The usual childhood curiosity. One thing actually that now you mentioned is very interesting for me. You said the kind of idea of high school was, to prepare you to choose what you like.
Exactly.
But they dictated literally to you either medicine or become a lawyer or an engineer, which is actually quite similar. I mean, completely similar actually to back in my country, Iran, because simply, literally it's the same thing, because they don't really help you to choose what you like. You have three options: either become a lawyer or engineer or a doctor, and that's it. And when I selected chemistry, for example, myself, everybody was looking at me like a pity that, so you couldn't get engineering. I said, I didn't want to. So, nobody asked that, for example, you could go to engineering school, but you decided to go to chemistry. No, the default was that you couldn't go to engineering. Therefore, you selected, for example, chemistry as a science. So, which now that you say, two different countries, two different regions of the world, even one in Asia, Middle East, the one in Europe, but completely, I would say, similar way of, guiding the students in high school.
I would say so, yes. I I do agree with you based on what you're telling me. And I have to say that honestly, now that I'm looking back on it, I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm regretting the path that I chose, but I do see that this was really honest life advice. Because when I see my colleagues who went into these directions, they do really have quite, let's say, already established lives and stable careers back in their hometown, in their region. And if I wanted to study geology, I think basically on the day that I enrolled in this bachelor program, I could have forgotten to find some certain job in my hometown, for instance. No?
Yes.
But yeah, it was basically more directed towards honest life advice rather than pursuing your dreams. Because whenever somebody mentioned, for example, in high school that he wanted to study biology or physics or chemistry for that matter, usually the first comment that would be given by the professors, who were sometimes even the professors of the subject itself, which makes it a bit absurd, would be,
okay,
but what do you think that you can do with this except being a high school professor? Very discouraging comments,
even from them.
Exactly.
Okay. But I mean, I completely agree with you because they, for example, studied, your colleagues, your classmates, they studied like electrical engineering, and now they have a job in your city, and they are established there. But I mean, I know that, let's say, our final goal would be also be settled somewhere and be stable somewhere at some point.
Exactly.
But do you think, for example, experiencing, being adventurous and, for example, taking the risk, does it worse? I mean, leave the stability for a while, not forever, of course, for a while, and, come out of your city, do something else?
Well, if it wasn't the case, I think we wouldn't be having this conversation, because I wouldn't have ever left so far as Switzerland to do my PhD.
Yes.
So I think in many ways it really is worth it to get out of your comfort zone, let's say,
exactly.
or do not follow a very linear and predictable pathway, because there are benefits to be reaped in many cases if you follow such a pathway.
So far you decided to study geology because you thought, okay, it's a good combination of chemistry and biology, that you like both of them.
Exactly.
So where did you study your bachelor?
I studied my bachelor at the University of Zagreb at the Faculty of Natural Science. And in Eastern Europe in general, universities function a bit of a different principle, because, for example, in University of Bern or University of, for example, Berlin, one of the 3 universities in Berlin, the quality of the education that you're going to see in all of these universities in most Western European and Central European countries are less or more uniform. There's not going to be a big difference in the quality between political science department and Department of Earth Science or Department of Physics. In University of Zagreb, it's a bit of a different case, where some departments and certain faculties do not actually pay that much attention to the quality of the programs, while others do. And mine was the Faculty of Natural Science, which was, let's say, a place which had a reputation to be strict, but high in quality. And yeah, so it was known as a nerd center, so to speak.
Your department then?
Exactly. Okay. My Faculty of Natural Science was somewhat of a nerd center, exactly. Okay. And it was divided into 7 different departments. And one of the departments where I was mainly based, except for a few external courses, was the Department of Geology.
So you went there, you studied geology. When did you finish your bachelor?
I started my bachelor in 2018, in October, and I finished my bachelor in June 2021.
June 2021. Okay.
Yes.
Let me ask you actually something here, because so far you are still continuing your journey in Croatia. So you didn't go to a new country. Was it, for example, for you difficult moving from your hometown to a different city, still in your country? Or, I mean, for sure it has some challenges. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm not ignoring that. But do you consider that experience as something difficult and challenging, or it was, yeah? What do you think? Yeah.
This is a question which basically depends on which moment you are asking, I think, because if I'm looking back at it now, it seems a bit of a joke. But back at that moment when you are 19 or 20 or whatever years old and never left your parents' apartment and roof, it is a big step, especially if you're moving from another city. If you're moving from another city to a completely, let's say, new environment where you're alone. It's not so much about the fact that you are still in the same country. You don't even pay attention to it when you are faced in a situation that you jumped out of the nest into the big unknown.
So literally, it's very similar, actually.
Yes.
Okay. So in 2021 you finished your bachelor in geology.
Yes.
What was the next step?
Well, I think maybe it would be interesting to go a few steps backwards to discuss the next step and how it led to it.
Okay.
So during my bachelor studies in geology, I was in fact initially interested more in the biological part, meaning paleontology, evolutionary biology, history of the Earth's planet, history of life on Earth. But during my bachelor studies, how should I say it? I faced some unexpected, let's say, developments. Mainly in the following way. We had in the first semester, apart from the usual chemistry, biology, mathematics, physics courses, a couple of, let's say, foundational courses in the geological subjects.
Okay.
One of them was about basic geology, defining different types of, let's say, phenomena that happen on a macroscopic scale on the planet, sedimentary processes, igneous processes, metamorphic processes. Then there was one on paleontology, which is the study of fossils, related, of course, to the study of evolution of life. And then the third one was mineralogy and crystallography. And, as I already stated before, in the beginning, I had a stronger interest towards the paleontological part.
Yes.
Before I even started, just, I guess, based on, I don't know what, honestly. Simply speaking, what I read, what I researched on my own. But then I came to the bachelor's, and in fact, it turned out that all of these subjects were so boring because they didn't teach us any concepts. It was just about memorization of different names of species and genus and listing it in a different time interval. So I found it extremely dry and boring, while crystallography was extremely logical. It was all about symmetry elements, how different, let's say, motifs can be translated using symmetry elements, how this relates to mathematical operations.
Yes.
I found it much more pleasing, simply speaking, because I didn't have to force myself to memorize some names. Rather, just logically understand what is happening. And this is where the love story began.
Yes, exactly.
So to speak.
So there was, I totally agree. So, for example, in the, let's say, pure geological side, there is no, let's say, logic in it, right? It's mostly you memorize the certain periods, the names.
I honestly wouldn't know what to tell you because I never faced the geological subjects in a foreign setting or in a foreign university, how they do it abroad. But the way that we do it in Croatia is extremely, let's say, like this.
Just memorize.
I think it's kind of a universal thing. Everywhere the subject is going into this direction that you have to simply memorize some things. But we went with it to a bit too extreme level, honestly. I'm not being biased, I'm just being very critical based on the conversations I had with my colleagues later on when I went abroad for my master's. And comparing to how much they had to memorize to myself, what I had to go through, we pushed it a bit too far. And, the part which makes me disappointed to this day is that I don't think that even to the people who later on go into depth in this subject, that it is useful for them as well.
I don't think so for anybody, to be honest. Okay, so you fell in love with, let's put it like that, with crystallography.
Exactly.
And so what was your options after after finishing your bachelor, actually, did you think about, I don't know, finding a job, for example, going to kind of an industry,
No.
education, nothing?
No, not at all, because everybody used to tell us in Croatia that a bachelor is worth nothing in principle. That is just a certificate which allows you to go to the master's degree.
Okay.
And that the master's is basically a basic requirement that you need for applying for any kind of industry jobs or jobs related to your profession. So I never even thought about it after finishing the bachelor's.
So by default you wanted to do a master degree.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
I see. Yeah. Quite similar to Iran, actually.
Yes.
Quite similar, yeah.
Yes.
So what was the next step, and where did you go? How did you choose where to do your master, I mean? Because you decided to do the master.
I'm going to come to this. So, as I said, after the first semester of experience in crystallography, I did develop a keen interest for it and started researching more and more on my own, so to speak. Started, Googling for different kinds of papers on different topics, ranging all the way from mineral structures to material science, even which was back then quite outside of the scope of my education, because we didn't have such a strong focus on material science, except for the characterization part, which is, let's say, shares techniques with geology, right?
Yeah.
And during this period, during the second year of my bachelor studies, I realized that, in fact, the research opportunities in Croatia are quite limited in comparison to the opportunities that you have in other countries in Europe, mainly and namely Western countries west of Croatia, which then started to bug me in a sense that I started to ask myself the question, should I even stay here for a master's? What kind of possibilities does it offer to me? How modern is this master program and relevant for nowadays? And does it really have a deep focus on crystallography? And, I read the curriculum of the master program and didn't really find it that interesting, to be honest, because it was mainly still, let's say, related to geological material and geological samples like petrology, studying rocks, geochemical analyses. And then I started looking more and more at master programs abroad, different types of programs related mainly to, let's say, an interface between material science and mineralogy, between these two subjects.
Yeah, of course.
And found several interesting programs mainly in Germany. And I had that luck that I studied German back in my elementary, middle, and high school. So I had a pretty good background in the German language. And then basically it was already decided by the beginning of the fifth semester, which means by the start of the third year of the bachelor program, that I am not staying here. And that I will apply for a master program abroad. Because I simply didn't see myself stay in this setting where the research opportunities were so limited and where the curriculum was simply not fitting to my, let's say, interests.
Your interests, yes. But speaking of, you mentioned research opportunities. What do you mean that they were limited? You mean funding? There was no funding, equipment, or?
Funding and equipment is pretty limited in Croatia.
Funding and equipment.
This is still pretty much a problem. I think nowadays it's getting a bit better since we joined the European Union. We're seeing constant improvements, but there is certainly still a lag, let's say a lag behind in comparison to our neighbors, even neighbors like Slovenia, close neighbors.
Yeah.
And then to the next nearest neighbors, I think I don't even have to speak about. Yeah, so basically the problem is indeed the funding opportunities as well as the equipment that you have available.
Okay.
I mean, I have to be honest and say that what our scientists in Croatia are doing with the limited opportunities and funding and equipment that they have is wonderful and marvelous.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
But for a young person who is up and coming, it's definitely tricky, in the very least word.
If you had the professor position, yeah, you can deal with those limitations, but for somebody like you that wants to explore and, learn something at least, I don't think so if it's really suitable. So you already decided to move abroad. And
Exactly.
Yeah, please continue.
And then I was considering several different master programs, mainly in Germany. Actually, only Germany. Only in Germany, yes.
Only German, okay.
And among others, it was, I think, I don't even remember where I applied. I applied to a lot of different universities. Some of them which I remember was in Aachen, the Rheinische Westfälische Technische Hochschule, which is a well-renowned German university. Then there was also an application sent to Nuremberg, as far as I remember, and Munich. Why Munich? Well, I honestly have to say to this day that I don't really know why. I guess one of the reasons is because it's geographically a bit closer to home, which made it affordable for me to sometimes, even for extended weekends when there was a public holiday, to travel back to Rijeka, because it's 8 hours by bus, while Aachen is basically at the border with Netherlands.
Yeah, exactly, the other side of the Germany. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think it would have made much of a difference in the end, because the master programs are very, very, very similar in terms of the content that they were teaching. So that was the decision why I decided to go for a master program in Munich. And it was a joint master program of the University of LMU, Ludwig Maximilians Universität, and Technische Universität München, TUM.
Yeah, TUM, yeah.
More well known as that abbreviation name. And it was a master program, as I said, basically in the interface between material science, mineralogy, with a strong crystallographic component. We had several different courses ranging from powder diffraction, single crystal diffraction, up to techniques to grow crystals, electron microscopy, nanomaterials. It was a well-rounded program, I would say, for somebody who wanted to jump into materials research and relate crystallography to that.
Thanks, Lovro. Let's have a short break and then we will come back. Okay, so you moved to Germany, to Munich. How was it?
Hard. In the very beginning,
Hard.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was quite difficult for me, mentally speaking, to do this move. Because, simply speaking, although we're geographically close to each other, language differences and cultural differences are from time to time, in some situations and settings, rather large between Germany and Croatia. Because Germany is basically a very, let's say, hierarchical society, They pretty much strictly follow rules and regulations and an expected schedule and protocol.
Yes.
While Croatia is in this regards much more chaotic. So coming from a chaotic and unpredictable environment to an environment where everything is going according to protocol, or at least expected to go, caused a lot of confusion and frustration, I have to say. And even though I knew the language and could understand the people, I still had some struggles, let's say, with polishing it, because I didn't speak it for 5 years after finishing my high school. Didn't actively use it. So there were a lot of challenges along the way, and as I said, it was mainly related, I guess, to the differences in the organization of the society, which caused, simply speaking, frustration and confusion. And it was very hard for me in the first few months to deal with that.
But beside this structure of the society, did you also find it hard to integrate in the society, despite the fact that you speak the language So you didn't have problem, communication-wise, because you could talk to people. But did you find it hard to, like find friends, integrate in the society? How that aspect was?
On that aspect, I would say that it wasn't actually that hard, especially because finding friends in an international master program means that you're going to meet other internationals and that you're basically destined to communicate with each other and, let's say, befriend each other, right?
True.
So no, I think on that aspect it wasn't, especially if you're a very communicative person. I mean, I'm not, so I had a bit of struggle simply because I'm a bit of a, let's say, introvert character.
Yeah.
But as an international student in Germany, I think you're going to find friends for sure because there are many other internationals. And regarding fitting into the society, yes, well, on this regards, as I said, even if you speak the language, you simply have to get used to some different customs, some different norms.
Yeah.
And it takes some time to get adjusted.
Sure.
True.
I mean, that's normal. But do you think the language helped you a lot if you would not speak German?
I think, honestly, I have to say that if I came to Germany without speaking a single word of the language, and if I'm a person who is not willing to learn it, it would have been a big difference to me how much I would have liked to stay not just in Germany, the country, but in any German-speaking country. Probably I would have left to somewhere else after my master program. So I think language does play a huge role, and especially because you can get away, let's say, as a master student in Germany with speaking English, but you're going to be very limited in terms of the life, in terms of dealing with bureaucracy, in terms of dealing with everyday interactions with people. It's important. It's definitely important. Germany is definitely an international country with a lot of foreigners living there, but not as international as someone might expect it, that everybody is going to speak English to you, that documents are going to be translated in English for you. No. In this setting, you do require knowledge of the language, absolutely.
You moved to Munich. Now you are studying what you like, crystallography. How did your master went on? How was your master?
Well, my master, let's say, was pretty good. Altogether, my performance was quite above expectations even. And I was considering several different topics for my master thesis, and I thought that maybe one of the things that could be interesting is to see how a purely research-based environment looks like, which is the reason why I applied for a master thesis topic at the nuclear reactor FRM2, which is the research neutron reactor close to Munich, in the small let's say in the small town of Garching. And I worked on studying battery materials, mainly designing all solid-state batteries requires using different types of solid electrolyte materials, which means solid ionic conductors. Right?
Yes.
And what is relevant for these materials is, of course, the mechanical properties, as well as the electrochemical reaction window in which voltage range they're stable. And naturally, since we're talking about performance on different temperature scales and ranges, to study the thermal behavior. And that's how I got involved into studying phase transitions of these solid electrolytes using powder diffraction.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, for sure it's an interesting topic. So when did you finish your master then?
And the master was finished then in 2023 in October.
Okay.
So it was basically 2 years sharp since starting the master in October 2021.
So October 2023, you finished your master. Now, did you think about industry or educational jobs, or no, you were keen to?
Didn't think about anything else except a PhD, honestly, because back at that point I was still very, let's say, not going to say ambitious, but simply speaking, curious and optimistic about doing research and imagining myself doing a career in research.
But research could be also, you can do research in industry, right?
That is true. And at that point, I was not really aware of the existence of research in industry.
Okay,
you know.
okay.
So, yes, I didn't, even at my master's point, after I finished my master's, I still didn't consider anything else except continuing my education to the next step, which was a PhD.
October 23, you finished your master, and then?
The next step, so we have to go back a bit again, because I was already starting to look for PhD positions back in April the same year, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
And had several offers, including one offer from my supervisor for the master thesis to stay where I am, and a couple of other applications that I sent around Germany, and one to Sweden, if I remember correctly, and several in Switzerland. And the one that I in the end decided to go for was obviously the one in Switzerland, since I'm now here in Bern doing the PhD. And that was decided already back in July 2023. So I already got accepted.
I see. Oh, so before finishing your master, actually.
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Yes. And then it was less or more certain already back in July, even before I finished, that I'm going to go there. And I said to myself that I'm going to do this. And then after I finished the thesis and turned it in, we had to simply wait for bureaucratic reasons. We had to delay the start of the PhD until December of the same year, because it had to take some time for the master thesis to be registered into the system, and all the certificates to be printed.
So and officially be a master student, actually.
Exactly.
To be able, to own a master degree.
Exactly.
To be able to start your PhD.
Exactly.
Yes. Now that you are studying your PhD, and you mentioned in the beginning that what are you roughly doing at the moment, does that curiosity that you talked about, that, pushed you in doing a master and pushed you again to doing a PhD, do you think, at least at this stage of your PhD, does that curiosity still exist? Do you still see yourself, okay, I will finish my PhD, then I continue in academia, or in this academic research, or how is that curiosity doing?
Let's say it in the following way. The curiosity still exists, I would say, and the wish still exists. But I came to the realization that I can simply, not sugarcoat the reality of the job market right now. And despite the fact that the curiosity still exists, unfortunately, I'm driven to the situation. Unfortunately or fortunately, this depends whom you ask.
Yes,
this is a very subjective opinion. But I am definitely more and more, now that I'm at, let's say, the midpoint of my PhD, I just entered the third year.
Yeah.
I am definitely more and more, let's say, keen on considering a switch towards industry after finishing the PhD. Simply because, as I said before, we should not sugarcoat the situation, and I think a lot of other people who you might interviewed for your podcast series might relate to the situation that I'm going to explain, as well as you yourself, of course.
Yeah, of course. I'm not exceptional,
That, when you look at the prospects, when you look at the status quo, and when you look at the forecast for the future, it simply doesn't look good for anybody who is an up-and-coming PhD student or postdoc in terms of the availability of positions that are stable and secure.
That's true, yeah.
And not just that, but also the funding structure for postdocs causes a lot of, let's say, begs a lot of questions, let's say it in a simple way. And due to this reason, in a situation that is uncertain and unpredictable, I would say that it's simply necessary to have some backup plans ready to pull out in case that you cannot follow your dreams and ambitions and curiosities anymore. So, in fact, what is my current, let's say, state of mind is that I would prefer, after finishing this PhD, to jump out for a moment or two, meaning a year or two, maybe even, and try to see what it looks like on, let's say, the other side of the
moon.
Of the moon, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is my current status. Not because I'm not enjoying my PhD, or not because I'm not enjoying research, or reading, or designing my own projects, or pursuing knowledge out of pure curiosity, but simply speaking because of the situation that we, as up-and-coming people in this field, are facing. And it's everybody's telling it nowadays. It's a uncertain future. Already now, it's an uncertain present, and the future looks even more uncertain than the uncertain present. So it begs a lot of questions and raises a lot of fears for anybody who is in our age and in our position.
So you think this uncertainty is, if it's not the biggest, at least is one of the big challenges and struggles that
absolutely it's I would
PhD
define
students at least they have.
I would go so far to define it as a driving force which directs people towards certain reconsiderations and changes of goals and plans. They did it for me, I have to say. I still was quite optimistic at the end of my first year of the PhD, but now we're already entering the third year, and my plans have changed. I will not say drastically. I was already back then, at the end of the first year, considering that there are other options, and now they're being more and more seriously considered.
So this is, I totally agree with you. I am facing that actually, so I'm not even denying that. This is one of the struggles. But you, for example, came from Croatia to Germany and then from Germany to Switzerland. I'm sure you faced a lot of challenges and you had a lot of struggles or something like that. First of all, do you want to share, I don't know, one of the biggest challenges that you had? And secondly, beside this challenge, or maybe during that time, was there any point for you during your studies, bachelor, master, or now as a PhD, was there any point that you said, okay, it's enough, I want to give up, I don't want to continue, I want to do something else, I just want to, leave? Did you had such a...
Well, generally speaking, I have to say that there were a lot of struggles along the way, both in terms of, as I already previously mentioned, mental challenges that you were facing, but also financial challenges. I did face quite a lot, especially during the master period, because I worked between my master program and bachelor program. I worked in the summer between that for three different jobs in three different, let's say, time schedules: afternoon, morning, sometimes even evening, and gathered some savings to fund myself for a certain period of time, and let's say as a jumping point, as a starting point for my Munich stay. But that at some point ran out, and during the master program I simply couldn't balance working a part-time job, like a 50% part-time job, and studying and performing well in my studies at the same time. So it was at one point a question of how to go on. And I was lucky and blessed enough that my grandparents supported me and helped me finish this, because otherwise it would have not been possible without taking some kind of loan or debt, or sacrificing a part of my studies to simply work more. So these were some of the challenges from a materialistic perspective that I face. The other challenges I already mentioned before. But coming to the questions of whether at some point, either during my bachelor or master or PhD, I was thinking about quitting or saying this is enough. No, actually there was not at any point.
Mm-hmm.
Even now during the PhD, where I do have to say face a lot of disappointments and frustrations and struggles and realities that did not match the expectations at the very beginning, I never thought to myself that I'm going to quit it, because simply speaking, one of the reasons why is that I see nowadays a PhD, which also might be related to the reason why it's a bit devalued, is because it's a pretty much known outcome, you know. It is less or more a protocol that is being followed. There is not so many uncertainties that someone might initially think that they are. Sure, there is a lot of unexpected variables that come into play that you have to tackle and tangle along the way.
Sure.
But nothing that will, in my opinion, ruin your PhD, except if you do not put enough effort into it.
So you think let's say the plan or the pipeline is kind of quite clear?
I would say so.
Quite clear, not completely, of course.
Exactly. No, of course,
yeah.
there are some unexpected things that are going to happen along the way, unexpected developments and changes to the initial plan. Sure. But it's always, let's say, in a safe regime where as long as you have a supportive supervisor, you're probably going to graduate, you know. True. I think also one of the reasons why I never, so far, already at the midpoint of my PhD, thought about quitting is I really have to ascribe a lot of it to having a very supportive and understanding mentor. Mm-hmm. This is, I think, also a very important component of a PhD.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at least I myself, I know several PhD students that they quit because of they didn't receive, for example, the support or the understanding or the sympathy of their supervisors, so they couldn't continue.
But if I can, I would extend your question towards the future, I guess, because somebody might say or consider that in case that I say that I'm leaving academia after finishing the PhD and that I want to take a jump into industry, somebody might say, well, this is quitting. So you did give up at some point. Well, honestly, I would say that this is not really the case nowadays. We're facing a different reality. Because, for example, if you look at 50 years ago, the pathway was less or more linear and guaranteed to work. Nowadays, as I already mentioned before, you need to have a lot of backup plans simply because of a very uncertain future. And, you know, I still consider myself to be in education and as a student, which means that after you finish the PhD, honestly, I would say the real start of an academic career comes after that. This is just a preparation.
Exactly.
For what you might face. Which means, depends how you take on it. You could say that I'm going to quit in the near future if I'm successfully finding something in industry. But I would just say that it's not the case. I would just say that it's a necessary hiatus and a necessary jump into something which is so far unknown for me. And as I already said before, I do like exploring and venturing into the unknown, as we mentioned in the beginning. And I do not see a reason why I wouldn't simply expose myself to a completely new environment. I mean, I have so far zero experience with working in a industrial setting or zero clue about what kind of research they're doing.
I think one thing that now you mentioned came to my mind, that we should not actually make this mistake that consider, for example, industry jobs like an office job. Industry job does not mean that you go to an office, take some paper in the morning, fill out the forms, write the reports. I mean, exist these kind of jobs, but no, actually in industry also a lot of sectors, they have, challenges. They need to think about it. They need to use their knowledge. They need to communicate with each other. They need to, immerse themselves in a teamwork, and then sure they can overcome those challenges. So it's not like typical office job that we have. This, okay, you go 9 to 5 and that's it. It's not really like that. And I agree with you on that point. Yeah,
Yeah,
I totally agree.
to just add a comment to that, I think it's based on what I've at least heard from other people. It definitely is, how should I say, the liberty of research is definitely a bit narrower than academic research, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily uninteresting to do. I think we're basically now at a turning point where, as I said, based on the current outlook of academia and future that might be coming, we are going to see, I think, a very large exodus of academically educated people at the doctoral level towards other professions, simply because the circle is shrinking. Not so many people that are graduating can stay inside it.
Yeah, I mean, simply you cannot actually. I mean, it's not that you don't want to. Yeah. So, any final points that you want to say?
Yes, I guess to anybody who is in a currently similar situation as we are, meaning doing a PhD or a postdoc, well, you know, this might not be such an inspirational thing to say, or some very, let's say, pleasant words like follow your dreams or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you should always have some ambitions and curiosity beyond doubt, but you also, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think that we simply have to face the reality as it is right now, and that people in our position who are maybe listening to this should have a take-home message to diversify your options. Leave everything at the table, all possibilities, you know. Don't simply anymore consider a linear pathway, because it is a very uncertain pathway, actually.
Indeed, yes.
Nowadays.
Indeed, yes. Of course,
I do hope that at some point it might change for a better, but the reality is what it is. So, yeah, I guess a take-home message, as I said, would be what I just mentioned. Diversify your options, keep your doors open, network into different sectors, you know.
See what it comes, right?
Exactly.
Because you cannot even predict that as well. Lovro, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you as well, Yasser.
Thank you very much for listening to Unpublished Journeys. Please share with us your comments, your opinions. Please tell us what you think about the podcast. How can we improve our podcast? And if you have any suggestion for the guest, or if you want to be part of the podcast, please let us know. Thank you.